Wow, I mean that's a big question. All kinds of different stress. Certainly academic stress is high on the list here. Academics are tough here, and so there's definitely a lot of challenges associated with that, whether you're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Financial stress, it costs some money to attend Doan, and so there's definitely some factors that play a role in that. I tend to deal with a lot of relationship stress.
Many times it's relational, and so dealing with relationships. So we might have college students that come in as freshmen, adjustment to college, adjustment to being more independent, being away from home. But many times it's relational, relationships with friends, boyfriends, girlfriends.
What we've been gathering over the past 10 to 15 years is that, college students are not only, experience stress that sometimes other parts of the population don't, but there's also this time of life in terms of age and in terms of when we see the onset of a lot of mental health disorders anyhow, and then you couple that with the stress of oftentimes, it's financial stress and students trying to go to work, go to school, the stress of grades, getting into graduate school, getting jobs, living arrangements.
Almost anything in life can present some degree of stress depending upon what the factors are, what kinds of things are going on. So really just a multitude of different things can. Well, I mean, positively, stress is a part of life.
Stresses can be good. It's what keeps us breathing. It's what keeps us going.
Caring about what you're doing and being conscientious and taking care of things, that's going to create stress. But that's a good stress because hopefully that's going to help you achieve better in your classes, be a better friend, be better in your relationships, those kinds of things. And so that's kind of a good thing that's going on.
But in terms of stress can also exacerbate mental health symptoms too.
Stress can have a tremendous impact on mental health.
But certainly stress at a certain level can start to cause some real problems. And the most frequent things that I see in my office, which is typical not just at Doan College, but across all the colleges across the country, dealing with depression and anxiety in particular.
So when we're dealing with anxiety, racing thoughts, reoccurring thoughts, and so that kind of gets in the way of our education many times, and so we're not as productive people.
It can impact your grades, your physical health, which impacts your mental health, which impacts your relationships, your support systems, and it's circular in a lot of ways in terms of in a bidirectional cause and effect.
If you really think about it, think of all the things that happen in a 4-year period of time. That's a very traditional kind of 4-year period of time. But especially here at Doan, where a lot of students finish in 4 years, you're basically coming into an environment where you didn't have near the number of responsibilities as you had before you got to college.
When you're dealing with new independence, or you're dealing with new situations, developing new relationships, those make us vulnerable to stress.
It is that time in your life where everything kind of does come to a head. Like I said, it is oftentimes for a lot of mental health disorders anyhow, that's a time of onset, and then you add in the college experiences.
It definitely is a little bit of a combination of sometimes a predisposition going on and then dumping in the right amount of stress at this timeline in your developmental life that you can start to have some more issues.
From what information pretty clearly tells us is that absolutely has it always been an issue? Yes. But on top of it, kind of, like I mentioned previously, a lot of college students are maybe coming to college that wouldn't have been able to come to college in the past because of their mental health issues. But treatment, whether it's medications and therapeutic interventions, are kind of keeping those students, going to school and doing those things.
And there's programs, there's people out there identifying, hey, kids at this age need help. And so there's a lot of awareness. There's programs that have been developed on your campus to identify stress or to identify mental health issues. And at the same time, I think our world continues to change.
I do know the world is not a less complicated place, and we certainly have social media, and we have a lot of different things going on in the world now that we didn't have 20 years ago. And it presents good things for sure, like technology, but it also it also brings on a lot of host of other potential drawbacks.
Many college students, their phone sits by their nightstand, or it lays on their pillow next to them, and those texts and tweets and posts come instantly. And so it affects our sleeping patterns, it affects our study habits, it affects our growth. Yeah, again, when we start with a student, we start with assessment. We find out, how is it impacting them? How long have they had it? Is this something that was maybe identified in high school or elementary school, middle school? And so we look at their background, and then how is it affecting them? How is it affecting their day? Does it affect their productivity?
For me, I teach a lot of, I teach abnormal psych, I teach a lot of, the counseling class, I teach a lot of, and I teach in psychology. So we do talk about mental health issues. We talk about stress and not only mental, how stress impacts you in terms of your mental health, but also your physical health and what that does in terms of resiliency and how we combat that. So I guess, I think education does go a long way. When you get education, you can also, it addresses stigma when students realize how common mental health issues are. We do know that 2/3 of people with a diagnosed mental health issue don't get treatment, and a lot of that's due to stigma.
Of course, coming in for therapy, it gives them a chance to talk about it, identify it for themselves. Many times people will say things like, "Oh, I had no idea how stressed I really was," or "My friends are always telling me I'm just like a A-type personality, and I never really realized that I was."
I think education is really important. Not only accessibility to services is very important, but also realizing maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe there is, if I do seek help, maybe this can get better, and I think that's huge.
So when we look at kind of the overall picture, we want to look at different parts of the person's life and how they can maybe identify areas that increase stress and then start reducing them.
I spend a lot of time in here talking about probably what I always kind of consider the big three of things that students can do to really help themselves out, and sometimes it kind of dissipates a little bit when we're in the college environment. One of those is eating. It's different here, so it's when you're growing up, you're eating at home or whatever. It's a little more consistent that way. But then you're here eating in the cafeteria, or eating Tiger Inn, or just maybe not happy with the food choices or whatever, so you don't eat as well. Sleep tends to be something that sometimes gets pushed to the back burner a little bit because either you're studying or hanging out with your friends or whatever. And then the other thing that I like to have students do is getting some degree of exercise, because a lot of students really don't have time. They're really busy doing a lot of stuff, and they don't really like to get up maybe really early in the morning, get a run in or whatever, and by the time the day gets moving and everything's done, it's just the day is gone. Those are three things that really everybody can do, and I'm always encouraging students to do a little bit better with that. Nurse Kelly does as well, because those things are like a buffer with stress, and it's going to help with your physical health as well as your mental health.